I am Alara Voss, and I am 34 years old. I only stepped outside because I had forgotten a slim charcoal envelope in my car. It held printed contracts and handwritten notes I needed for an executive meeting scheduled for Monday morning. Nothing sentimental. Nothing dramatic. Just work. Another responsibility folded quietly into my life the way everything else always was. Behind me, the house glowed with warm amber lights, alive with chatter, clinking plates, and laughter that sounded pleasant enough if you didn't listen too closely. It was my grandmother Rowena Hale's 70th birthday celebration, an event planned for weeks, most of it paid for by me without any announcement or credit. Before I go any further, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from, because stories like this are meant to reach people who need to hear them, even when the truth is uncomfortable. I had arrived earlier than everyone else that evening, as usual. I checked that the caterers had been paid in full, corrected the spelling of names on the cake topper, smoothed over a small argument between two cousins about seating, and made sure my grandmother's favorite white lilies were placed near her chair. No one asked me to do these things. They never needed to. I had trained myself over years to anticipate problems before they could become inconveniences for anyone else. Being prepared was my way of keeping peace. Being useful was how I belonged. I didn't announce what I contributed. I rarely did. I had learned early in life that praise attracted expectation, and expectation always came with a price I was expected to pay again and again. So I stayed quiet, reliable, available. As I walked down the long stone driveway toward my car, my heels made soft clicking sounds that echoed gently in the cool night air. A breeze brushed the back of my neck, carrying the faint smell of flowers and roasted food. The sky was clear, dark, calm. Nothing about the night suggested it would change my life. My car sat beneath an old oak tree at the edge of the property, the same tree where my grandfather once tied a swing when my mother was young. I unlocked the door and leaned inside, greeted by the familiar scent of clean leather and lavender from the air freshener. My fingers brushed against the passenger seat until they found the envelope exactly where I'd left it. Good, I whispered to myself, the word more habit than relief. I straightened, closed the car door carefully, and glanced back toward the house. Through the wide front windows, I could see silhouettes moving in warm light. Someone was singing badly, completely off-key. Someone else laughed too loudly in response, the kind of laughter that tried hard to prove happiness. I smiled faintly. Over the years, I had learned that gatherings didn't always mean closeness. Sometimes they meant performance. It's for Grandma, I reminded myself, the same phrase I'd repeated countless times over the years. I turned and walked back toward the house, the envelope held against my chest. The front door was slightly open, letting music and voices spill into the night along with the low hum of a television someone had forgotten to turn down. As I climbed the porch steps, I slowed because I heard my name. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't called with urgency. It was spoken casually, confidently, in the tone people use when they believe the person being discussed is far enough away to be harmless. It was my mother's voice. Serene Voss always spoke with certainty, even when she was being unfair. Especially then. Alara will handle it, she said calmly. Someone made a sound of agreement, a small approving hum. I took another step, then stopped completely. The porch light cast a soft circle on the wooden floorboards. I stood right at its edge, half in the light and half in shadow, listening without meaning to. I wasn't suspicious yet. Just still. Just present. You don't even have to ask her properly, my mother continued. You just tell her what's needed and she finds a way. A second voice answered, thin and amused. My Aunt Corinne. That's why she's useful. My fingers tightened around the envelope. Useful. The word landed in my chest with a dull, unexpected sting. Not sharp enough to bleed, but heavy enough to bruise. I told myself to move. To walk inside. To remind myself I was grown, independent, safe. But my body refused to obey. It was as if my feet had decided that if my heart was finally going to understand something, it needed to hear it all. Inside the house, someone poured a drink. A chair scraped across the floor. Then my mother said the sentence that changed everything. She's basically our money engine. A soft laugh followed. Not cruel. Not exaggerated. Just relaxed amusement. My stomach dropped. The worst part wasn't the sentence itself. It was how normal it sounded coming from her mouth. How easily it fit into conversation, like a fact everyone already accepted. I felt my throat tighten, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was listening carefully, painfully, confirming a fear I had carried quietly for years. Another voice joined in, my cousin Daria's, light and careless. If she wasn't like that, we'd all be in trouble. Someone replied, she likes playing the hero. Let her. My face grew warm, not from embarrassment, but from the strange, hollow sensation of being discussed like a resource. Like a service. Like something that could be used until it ran out. Through the open doorway, I could see part of the living room. Balloons floated near the ceiling. My grandmother sat proudly in her chair, a plate balanced on her lap, smiling as people moved around her. That image hurt the most. Grandma Rowena was the only one who had ever thanked me without asking for more. She used to squeeze my hand and call me my strong girl, not because I paid for things, but because she believed strength meant kindness. I wanted to hold on to that. I wanted to believe the love in that room was real. But the conversation continued. I don't even need to be nice about it, my mother said. She knows her role. Her role. The words lingered in the air like smoke. Something inside me shifted, slow and heavy, like a shelf finally collapsing after years of holding too much weight. Memory after memory surfaced with new meaning. The time I paid my brother Nolan's rent when he just needed a little help. The weekend I skipped my own medical appointment to cover my cousin's tuition fees. The months I worked overtime to clear my mother's business debt because she said it was for the family name. I had believed I was building love. Now I understood I had been building expectation. As long as she feels needed, my mother added quietly, she'll keep giving. She needs us more than we need her. That line wasn't careless. It was calculated. I stepped back slowly, carefully, one step at a time, like someone leaving a room without turning on the light. I walked down the porch steps and stood beside my car again. The envelope was still in my hands, but it felt lighter now, like paper instead of purpose. My breathing was steady. My posture stayed controlled. It surprised me how calm I felt. Calm wasn't peace. It was my mind protecting my heart from breaking all at once. I looked at the house and whispered, so that's what I am. My phone buzzed. Messages filled the screen. Where are you? Grandma wants photos. Bring the cake now. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my notes app and typed one sentence. Stop funding people who love your money more than your presence. Then I sat in the driver's seat, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring into the dark road ahead as if my future was parked somewhere just beyond what I could see. For a long time, I didn't turn the key. I listened to the distant music drifting through the night. I told myself I should go back inside. Smile. Take photos. Hug my grandmother. Pretend nothing had happened. That was my pattern. Swallow the pain. Keep the peace. Pay the bill. But something older than obedience rose inside me and refused. I stayed where I was. And for the first time in my life, I didn't go back when they expected me to. The music from the house continued, drifting across the driveway in soft waves, as if nothing important had happened. As if the ground beneath my feet hadn't just shifted. I remained in the car, hands still on the steering wheel, breathing slowly, deliberately, the way you do when you're trying not to panic or implode. The envelope lay untouched on the passenger seat now, forgotten, irrelevant. For the first time in years, work was not the most urgent thing in my life. My phone vibrated again. Nolan. I watched it ring until the screen went dark. Then it rang again almost immediately, persistent, impatient. I answered on the third ring, my voice steady even though my chest felt tight. Where are you? He asked without greeting. Grandma's asking for you. I stared through the windshield, my reflection faintly visible in the glass. My face looked calm. Older somehow. I'm outside, I said. Outside where? His irritation was already rising. Why would you leave? You're supposed to be here. Supposed to be. The words landed exactly where everything else had. I paused, choosing my next sentence carefully. If I wasn't paying for anything, I asked quietly, would you still be calling me right now? There was a moment of silence on the line, followed by a short laugh that tried very hard to sound casual. What kind of question is that? He said. Answer it. He sighed, clearly annoyed. Elara, don't do this tonight. It's Grandma's birthday. The deflection told me everything. I'm not doing anything, I replied. I'm asking. His tone dropped, sharpened. You're being emotional. Come back inside. Not are you okay? Not did something happen. Just come back inside. I ended the call without saying goodbye. That was the moment it truly sank in. Not that they were capable of being cruel, but that their indifference was effortless. It didn't require anger. It didn't require thought. It was simply how they saw me. I stayed in the car, watching the house like it was a stage play I had finally walked out of. People moved behind the windows, raising glasses, smiling wide. A few minutes later, the front door opened, and my mother stepped onto the porch, phone pressed to her ear. She paced slowly, confidently, as if the world bent naturally to her schedule. "Yes, everything is perfect," she said warmly into the phone. "Alara handled it. She always does." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Even now, she was using my name like a tool. When she ended the call, she glanced around, her expression shifting slightly, confused, like someone realizing a lamp hadn't turned on when they flipped the switch. "Has anyone seen Alara?" she called into the house. That was usually my cue. The moment I appeared, smiling, fixing, providing. Tonight, I didn't. Instead, I opened the car door and stepped out. The porch light illuminated my face as I walked toward the steps. My mother saw me immediately. For a brief second, relief crossed her features. Then it hardened into irritation. "There you are," she said, descending the steps like she was approaching an employee who had wandered off. "Why are you acting strange? People are asking questions." I stood still, shoulders relaxed, envelope still in my hand. "I heard you," I said calmly. She blinked. "Heard what?" "You called me your money engine." The silence that followed was thick, heavy, undeniable. Her lips curved into a quick laugh, sharp at the edges. "Oh, Alara, don't be dramatic. It was a joke." I didn't smile. "You weren't laughing because it was funny," I said. "You were laughing because it was true." Her expression tightened. "So what if it is?" she snapped. "You help out. That's what you do. You're good at it." "That's not love," I replied quietly. "That's a job." She scoffed. "And you expect love from who? You're always working. You chose that life." I took a slow breath. "I chose to survive," I said. "I didn't choose to be used." Her eyes flicked toward the doorway, checking to see if anyone was watching. Her concern wasn't my pain, it was the scene. "Lower your voice," she hissed. "Do you want the whole family to hear this?" "They already did," I said. "They were in the room when you said it." Her face hardened. "You're too sensitive. Everything is always about you. We needed help. You helped. That's how family works." I stepped slightly closer, not aggressive, just refusing to shrink. "Family works when it goes both ways," I said. "When you needed help, I gave it. When I needed respect, you laughed." She threw her hands up. "Respect? You're making trouble on your grandmother's birthday." "Don't hide behind Grandma," I said softly. "You never protect me. You just use her to keep me quiet." Her jaw clenched. "So what do you want?" she demanded. "An apology? Money back?" "I want the truth," I replied. "Who am I to this family when I'm not paying?" She laughed again, sharper this time. "Then don't pay," she said. "We'll survive." I looked at her, sadness settling deep in my chest. "You don't want me," I said gently. "You want what I provide." "You're ungrateful," she snapped. "After everything we've done for you." "Name one thing," I said. "One thing you've done for me that didn't come with expectations." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence answered for her. At that moment, the front door opened again, and Nolan stepped out, scanning the porch like a manager arriving late to handle a problem. "What's going on?" he demanded, looking at me first. "Why are you causing drama?" I met his gaze calmly. "You came out because there's a problem," I said. "Not because you care." "Don't do this," he warned. "We're in the middle of a party." "That's always the problem," I replied. "My feelings are always inconvenient." "You're being childish," he said. "Mom was joking." "So you heard it," I said. "Did you defend me?" He looked away. "It's not that serious." "It's serious because it's my life," I said. He leaned closer. "Just come inside. Smile. We'll talk later." "Later never comes," I replied. "Later is how you keep me quiet." My mother crossed her arms. "If you walk away now," she said coldly, "don't come back begging." "I've never begged," I said. "I've only given." "So what now?" Nolan snapped. "You're punishing us?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm stopping myself from being punished." I turned toward the car. Nolan grabbed my wrist, not hard, but entitled, as if stopping me was his right. "Let go," I said calmly. He did. That was when I realized they had never respected my strength, only my patience. I got into the car, started the engine, and drove away without rushing, without slamming anything, without chaos. For the first time, my exit was quiet. And it was final. The drive home felt longer than it was. Not because the road stretched endlessly, but because my mind was finally quiet enough to notice everything. The streetlights blinked past in steady rhythm, red lights changing to green without urgency, the city breathing in its usual way. My phone buzzed repeatedly on the passenger seat. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to see the messages to know what they said. Come back. You're embarrassing us. You're overreacting. This isn't the time. There's always something that isn't the time when truth arrives. I parked outside my apartment building 10 minutes later. Modern. Quiet. Clean. A place I paid for myself, maintained myself, and somehow never fully rested in because my mind was always elsewhere. I sat in the car for a moment after turning off the engine, listening to the soft ticking as it cooled. My hands trembled slightly now, not from fear or regret, but from release. I had been holding myself together for so long that my body needed time to understand it was finally allowed to loosen. I leaned my head back and let one tear fall. Just one. It slid down my cheek silently, carrying years of swallowed disappointments with it. I wiped it away and whispered, "Okay." Not as surrender, but as permission. Inside my apartment, I turned on the kitchen light and set my keys down carefully. I poured myself a glass of water and drank slowly, grounding myself in the simple act. Then I opened my laptop and logged into my banking app. Numbers filled the screen, balances that once made me feel powerful, now making my stomach turn. Not because of the money itself, but because of what it had cost me to earn it and what it had been used to buy: silence, approval, access. I opened a spreadsheet labeled family support. The list was longer than I remembered. Rent transfers, tuition payments, cleared debts, emergency funds that were never really emergencies, business loans that were never repaid. The total made my chest tighten. I hadn't just helped. I had built their comfort brick by brick while convincing myself that was what love looked like. I closed the spreadsheet and opened a new document. Title: Boundaries. Under it, I typed one sentence. No more funding disrespect. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up, not to answer, but to read the latest message. Come back. You're embarrassing us. I stared at the screen for a long time, then whispered, "You still don't get it." The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Not from anxiety, but from clarity. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in soft bands, and for the first time in years, I didn't reach for my phone immediately. I sat up and listened, to the hum of the city, to my own breathing, to the quiet I had always been afraid of. It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. When I finally checked my phone, there were dozens of messages. Some were angry. Some were confused. Some pretended to be concerned. My mother's messages were the longest, weaving guilt and blame together in the same paragraph. "You embarrassed me. You broke my heart. After everything I've done for you." I read them slowly, without reacting. And then I noticed something that settled deep in my chest. None of them asked how I felt. Not one. I set the phone down and made coffee, moving deliberately, reclaiming my time one small action at a time. Later that morning, I drove to my grandmother Rowena's house alone, just as I had promised. She smiled when she saw me, reaching for my hands with warmth that felt real and uncomplicated. "I missed you last night," she said gently. "I needed to leave," I replied honestly. She studied my face with eyes that had seen decades of human behavior and understood more than people gave her credit for. "Did they hurt you?" she asked softly. I nodded once. She squeezed my hands. "Then you did the right thing." The words settled into my chest like permission I had waited my whole life to receive. Over the next few weeks, the changes were subtle but profound. I stopped transferring money automatically. I stopped answering late-night calls wrapped in urgency, but empty of respect. At first, the silence from my family was loud. Then it turned accusatory. My brother Nolan sent a message asking for help just this once. My Aunt Corinne hinted at emergencies that somehow never involved doctors or paperwork. Each time, I replied politely and firmly, "I can't do that anymore." The first few times, my hands shook. Then they steadied. At work, something shifted too. Without the constant emotional drain, I found myself more focused, more present. Colleagues noticed. My supervisor commented on my clarity in meetings. A project I had quietly led for months finally launched, earning recognition I hadn't chased but deserved. I realized how much energy I had been leaking into people who only noticed me when something was due. One evening, as I walked home from the office, I caught my reflection in a shop window and noticed I was standing straighter. Not because I felt superior, but because I no longer felt reduced. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I had confused sacrifice with love. In those sessions, I said my mother's words out loud for the first time. She's our money engine. Hearing them spoken in a quiet room stripped them of their power. That sentence tells you who they were, my therapist said gently. Not who you are. I carried that truth with me. The family didn't accept the change gracefully. There were accusations of selfishness, of abandonment, of forgetting my roots. I listened without defending myself. I had learned that explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you is just another form of self-erasure. One afternoon, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in the hallway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "So this is how you live now," she said, scanning the space as if looking for something to criticize. I didn't invite her in. "What do you want?" I asked calmly. "I raised you," she snapped. "And this is the thanks I get?" "You raised me to be useful," I replied. "Not valued." Her voice softened just slightly. "We're struggling," she admitted. "Bills don't disappear just because you're having feelings." "I'm not your solution anymore," I said. "You've changed," she said coldly. "Yes," I replied. I finally did. I closed the door gently, not to hurt her, but to end the conversation. Months passed. The distance became permanent, not because of anger, but because of clarity. I still loved my family, but I no longer sacrificed myself to prove it. My grandmother remained a bridge, calling often, reminding me that love didn't always wear the same face. One evening, my brother called again. His voice was different this time, tired, uneven. "Mom's sick," he said. "We need help." "What kind of help?" I asked. "Money." "Has she seen a doctor?" "Yes." "Then I can help you find resources," I said calmly. "That's not what I meant," he snapped and hung up. I cried afterward, not because I wanted to say yes, but because I finally understood the pattern. Loving someone didn't mean rescuing them from consequences. It meant refusing to lie about what love actually required. Years later, my life was quieter and fuller. My career flourished not because I chased success, but because I stopped financing dysfunction. I invested in rest, in experiences, in myself. I volunteered quietly, helping other women learn what I learned late. Generosity without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. At family gatherings, conversations were polite and distant. No one mentioned money anymore. They spoke to me carefully now, like someone they finally understood they could lose. One evening, sitting on my balcony and watching the city lights blink in the distance, I thought back to the night I stood on that porch holding an envelope I no longer needed. Pain had been the doorway. Courage had been the choice. Leaving wasn't abandonment. It was alignment. I didn't become cold. I became clear. I didn't stop loving. I stopped overgiving. And in doing so, I found something no amount of money could buy. Peace that didn't require approval. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Share this story with friends, family, and loved ones so they too can remember that choosing yourself is not selfish. It's necessary.